What is going on, guys? Scars here, or Brian, whatever you'd like to call me. And today I'm bringing you a new interview video. And today I'm joined here with Dave Does Cambodia. Right? That's the actual
That's
YouTube
me.
channel name. Yeah. So if you guys don't already know this man, I would absolutely check him out. He does some great in-depth videos about real life in Cambodia, particularly where he's living right now in Siem Reap, and
Correct.
he is just great. His personality is fantastic. You get an American perspective, expat perspective, what it's like to live in Vietnam, or excuse me, not Vietnam, in Cambodia, and honestly, it's about as real of a view as you can get. The day to day life. He is talking about many different aspects of life in Cambodia, including visas, food, just anything related to Cambodia, anything you want to know. He absolutely gives an amazing perspective on that. So, Dave, thank you very much for joining me today. And
Thank you for having me on. I really do appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. And I just want to kind of get started by asking because, anyone who's subscribed to you kind of just gets to see the day-to-day life of what it's like to be, in Cambodia, you talking about what it's like to be in Cambodia. Now, how about we talk first of all, talk about yourself. Where did you come from before all this Cambodia stuff happened? Your description kind of gives off a little bit of what happened. You basically sold your stuff and moved to Cambodia and just kind of made things happen. So, where did you come from? What were you doing and why did you decide to move to Cambodia in the first place?
Well, that's a long story. It started in 1963. No, I'm just kidding. I come from Michigan in the United States, and
Mm-hmm.
I was in the military. I had various, jobs. I was a taxi driver for a while. I was a salesman for a while, but I was never happy. And most of my life in Michigan, it's a big manufacturing or state.
Mm-hmm.
And so all you need are these factory jobs. And while they pay the bills, and some of them pay good, it's boring, monotonous, tedious, soul crushing work, is
Yeah,
what it is. And
absolutely.
I hated every day I was there. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had no purpose in life, just getting these jobs and going to work every day and grinding it out, and I know that's common for a lot of people. You hear it all the time on social media,
Yeah.
oh, I got to go to work today. But then I found out about TEFL, teaching English as a foreign language. And so I decided to check that out, see what that was all about. Because I may not be the most educated person,
Mm-hmm.
but I do well in English. And so I started checking it out, and I liked what I saw. And I never realized up to that point, 50 some years of living, that you could actually do this kind of thing, that you could actually move to another country without a bachelor's degree or anything, without having to spend a lot of money on college,
Mm-hmm.
and just go and teach English in another country.
Right.
So I started checking around. I took a TEFL course, and one day I just made the decision. I started checking out which countries to go to, and I was like, you know what, Cambodia. And I know it's not the thing you should do. You should check out a country first, make sure you're going to like it. I didn't do any of that. Once I made the decision, I gave myself like a year and a half. So I took the TEFL course, and I started selling all the stuff I had to get money, and finally started that 401k. I hear people talking about that in like comedies.
Yeah.
What is that? I don't know. I never had one of those. I was just a mess, paycheck to paycheck. So I saved that up and finally cashed out on that. So I had enough for my trip, and then I just moved over here. And from day one, I've been happy, and I never looked back.
Wow, that's great. And there's a couple of points there that kind of reminds me a lot of myself. I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with you that if you want to become an expat of another country, not visiting, but to actually become an expat, you should absolutely make sure you do visit. Before you actually go, just in case you end up regretting it. Only a month
And I
into
would
it.
recommend. I'm the exception to the rule,
Uh huh.
because I know a lot of people that do that. They just go to a country to live, and then if you wind up hating it, you really put yourself in a bind.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I will say this: I did the same thing with Vietnam. I actually used to live in Vietnam. I'd never have been to the country before. I've never. The only other country, well, it's a country and continent that I've been to is Australia. That was the only place I went to visit. But to get out of such out of my comfort zone to go to a place like Vietnam when I had no previous experience of knowing anything about it other than what YouTube videos show me. it was definitely overwhelming when I got there, but I was kind of in the same boat as you. I got very comfortable with it. I mean, obviously, culture shock and all that stuff, which is something that we could obviously go into. But I ended up falling in love with it. So I absolutely agree, though, that everybody's not going to have that kind of personality where I feel like they're going to be able to just move to a country that doesn't even speak English as the primary language and then try to get adjusted to that.
I would say most people are going to have an issue with that if they just
Absolutely.
try.
Well, that because that kind of goes back to one of the points you made in another video about the mental health, effects of moving to another country, that some people try to escape problems that they might have mental health wise from one country going to another and think that's going to magically solve their issues, which in the reality it's not. So I think that's kind of where the impression people get.
In some cases, it could make it worse.
No, absolutely. And especially when you're, again, getting out of your comfort zone and you're going to another country that, everything is completely opposite to everything you've known. I'm just using the United States as an example because we're both here in from the US or whatever. I think, yeah, absolutely. If you're not used to something like that, I think that would just exacerbate those issues. But, speaking of which, though, for you to just get up and go to this country, and you've been there how long now?
A little over 4 years now. I arrived on January 2nd, 2018.
Wow, 4 years.
Anniversary.
Wow. Now, let me ask you this. Have you had experience? Did you initially move to Siem Reap and that's just where you've been, or where did you start at and kind of been around?
Actually, yeah. And I don't really know why I chose Siem. Well, actually, I do. There was another YouTube channel that I watched
Mm-hmm.
religiously, dealing with life in Siem Reap, getting a teaching job in Siem Reap, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And this man was nice enough to answer all my questions when they emailed. So I try to return that favor to my viewers. If they email me or leave me a comment, I try to answer their questions. And it made me comfortable. I felt like I knew part of the city from his videos where he would walk around and talk and show people different things. And so deciding which city to move to, I just said, okay, Siem Reap, and I'll start there. And then I wound up falling in love with the city here.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fantastic. Phnom Penh is nice. I mean, but it's huge. It's a big city.
Yeah.
You got skyscrapers. You got a ton of traffic. It's just crowded and always bustling. And Siem Reap is big and it has all the amenities, but it's more of a small town feel in a bigger city.
Yeah. I was about to just say that I live here in a decent sized city here in Southwest Florida called Fort Myers. Maybe some people are familiar with the city here. It's kind of in a similar boat. It's got about a couple 100,000 people that live here, so it's not by any stretch of the means, a small or big city, but it's kind of in that perfect happy medium, and I feel like that's maybe kind of where Siem Reap lies, into, because, I lived in Hanoi, Vietnam. That's where I lived. And you want to talk about a big city. This has a population of about 8 million people,
Yeah.
so the air pollution was a really big problem there at times, which is something that was a huge drawback for me. Not that I necessarily have any, issues with that, with asthma or lung problems, but that was just one of the drawbacks because it would get really bad sometimes. So I'm assuming the contrast between even Phnom Penh and Siem Reap is probably quite large. I'm assuming, even though there's probably not a huge attention to the exhaust problems that create a lot of this smog in the air, I'm assuming Siem Reap is probably a lot better with those issues than Phnom Penh.
Well, yeah, because Siem Reap is also known as the city of temples because it has Angkor Wat, the largest
Mm-hmm.
religious structure in the world and one of the main tourist attractions of the world, and that's located right here in Siem Reap. So the rule is, according to their culture, because it's such a respected holy place, for their culture, that they can't have buildings in town that are higher than the main temple of Angkor Wat. So
Oh,
you're not going to
interesting.
see the skyscrapers or the big factories with the smoke rolling out of them.
So that's
So
intentional.
yeah, yeah, and they have a clean. It's got a really clean vibe to it, comparatively. Now, of course, you still see issues on the street with people throwing trash everywhere and things like that, but they're
Sure.
really making an effort to get people to stop doing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Education, finding them, and everything else. But you do see people burning trash here sometimes. That's an acceptable way to get rid of it if you can't afford the trash pickup, because,
Yeah.
it's an impoverished country. But overall, the air quality is probably way better than it is in Phnom Penh.
Now, have you spent time in Phnom Penh before, and how long have you spent there, if you have, or have you just kind of been down there
No,
for a little bit?
I've never been to Phnom Penh. Once I got here, I concentrated on
Oh, wow.
starting my YouTube and walking around, getting myself familiar with the city, and then of course finding a teaching job, and then of course, eh, I mean, I'm a nester. I don't like. I know a lot of people like to go from city to city, country to
Yeah.
country. They like to hop around, and I'm more of a. You know what? I like the city. I really don't see a need to go anywhere else. And I mean, I've been to a couple other towns. Of course, I've been up north. I've been over to my wife's home village where she came from.
Sure.
Uh, so you get the different experiences, but I just try to avoid a big place like Phnom Penh.
Yeah. So, and like you were saying, you've been there for about 4 years now. Have you noticed, a lot of changes in just the 4 years that you've been there?
Oh, an incredible amount of changes. And that's one thing about Cambodia. If there's one thing people should know about the Cambodian people is that they are resilient.
Yeah.
They are just, you're not going to stop these people. They keep going forward. They suffer all these huge setbacks. And they just, okay, well, time to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and get going forward again. And since I've been here, they've redone all the major roads in town. That just finished in December of last year, so just about a month ago.
Hmm.
They've redone all the roads.
Wow.
Uh, they've expanded the sidewalks. They put bike paths along the riverside, uh, and they're building new, more modern buildings. They're bringing in
Wow.
modern things like faster internet and more amenities that you would find in the Western world.
That's great.
They've
I mean,
changed a lot. They've changed so much. If you go back and look at some of my very first videos,
uh-huh.
and now you see me now go past some of the same places, it's a huge difference.
Well, yeah, and I mean, again, to your point about the resiliency and just how eager they are to move forward, with society. I mean, that really goes to show you because in the last 2 years, if you're living under a rock, already know COVID's affected everywhere in the world, and particularly tourism, which we'll kind of get onto in a minute. But I'm very surprised to hear that so much groundwork has been done with repaving these roads, kind of creating new buildings with the lack of tourism to bring a lot of this money into Cambodia. I don't know necessarily how much they rely on the tourism factor, because Cambodia is, I believe, considered a third world country still. So
Yeah.
for them to, not have that tourism really the last 2 years and to still be able to move forward as much as they have, that's pretty surprising to me. But again, I guess it just goes to show the resiliency from the people. So
Well, Cambodia is basically a developing country still because, well, I think everybody knows, and it doesn't get talked about as much anymore, but I think a lot of Western minds, if they know something about Cambodia, it's the Khmer Rouge days,
hmm.
where, they had the genocide, 25% of their population were killed or murdered.
Yeah.
And, and after that was done, they basically had to start over. They lost a lot of their traditions, they lost a lot of their culture
Hmm.
because most of the elderly people were killed off, which is why it's also a very young country now. But over the last 40 years, they basically had to rebuild. And, they say Rome wasn't built in a day, and no country can be.
Right.
But they have come such a uh, magnificent way. They've come steadily, and they've never given up, and they've just said, we're going to do this. And it's been great to see. But yeah, tourism is the second largest income maker for Cambodia, the first being export of garments. They have a
Hmm.
huge garment making industry that brings in most of the money. But tourism is definitely a close second. And so without that for the last 2 years, revenue has been down. A lot of businesses have closed, and probably permanently because they don't have the money to reopen. And they're just now trying to get back to that, what they call the new normal state, you know, finding new businesses, opening up the tourism again and letting people back into the country as safely as they can because they want to get that revenue back.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I think my camera kind of just died on me for some reason, so I guess we're just gonna kind of roll with that. I don't know if you could still see me or if it's just not on.
No,
Yeah,
I can't. That's a
yeah.
big S for this. But
Well,
you're doing
that's
that super. All
you
right.
know what, that's fine. We're gonna pin Dave anyways. We're gonna make him larger here, I think. So let me see.
Oh, oh. And this is the part where you lose all your viewers.
Let me see if I could. All right, there we go. All right, so that's better because yeah, you guys aren't going to be able to see me probably for the rest of this video. But anyhow, yeah, that's a great point. I again, I really kind of want to emphasize the tourism part too because I've seen one of your most recent videos that's shown that now these tourist visas can now be extended to long-term visas, which is fantastic. And there's not a set deadline on it this time. Like I believe last time you said it was something along the lines of 2 weeks, or it's only going to be available for a couple of weeks. But now there's no set deadline because they're kind of trying to get into a transitional period of actually trying to get a visa on arrival situation going. So what is
When I first got here, that's what it was. Visa on
yeah.
arrival. And that was great. All you had to do is tell them what kind of visa stamp you wanted when you got to the little desk there before you went and got your luggage. And that was easy. I mean, it was fine. But of course, COVID, they stopped all that. And when they opened up back for tourism, they were just issuing tourist visas, not the other kind of visa you need to live here long term. And but now they just announced that yes, you can change your tourist visa into a long-term visa at any travel agency, and you don't have to leave the country to do it like you normally would.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that's fantastic. That's like the news. A lot of people were waiting to hear. They wanted to come over here and retire. They wanted to come over here and try to get a job teaching English, but they just didn't have that path in. So I
Yeah.
think that's really going to open the doors, and then that should be a placeholder that should stay in place until they work out their visa on arrival uh, program again.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible kind of leap forward into getting countries open back up for tourism. Maybe you've heard recently articles about Philippines opening their borders back up. I believe February 10th. I think Vietnam is also kind of slowly getting into the period of opening their borders. Laos, I believe, is also opening their borders. I don't know the situation in Thailand. It's very spotty there every day, it seems like. I don't know if you know
They
anything.
change, they change a lot of things every day over in Thailand.
Yeah. Yeah.
I one time I heard they were open, and the next thing I heard, oh, you can't cross the borders anymore. And then somebody said you can cross if you're flying, but you can't cross on a bus or. So I don't know. I don't know what's happening.
It's very complex there, and unfortunately, Thailand's losing so much money too. I'm sure from the lack of tourism. I get and I understand the precautions still, but we've been dealing with this for 2 years now, and I'm happy to see some of these countries that have the common sense to say, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're finally going to actually start trying to open up these borders, allow tourism. Yes, we'll have precautions put into place, but we actually want to start going forward with allowing the world to open up again, which is great. I would venture to even say that hopefully by this June or July we could easily see back to normal visa on arrival situations for a lot of these, at least for Southeast Asia particularly. I would like to think we could see a lot of those countries open fully again for tourism. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think there has to be, but listen, when the COVID hit,
Mm-hmm.
no country was perfect. We never dealt with anything like that. No country had. And I know people like to go, oh, the government, the
Yeah.
bad guy. But the thing is, every government handled it in a different way, simply because we'd never experienced it before. So
Sure.
it was all a test run, basically. But we had to learn it in real time because of the danger. And so some countries handled it well, some countries didn't.
Yeah.
Uh, but because it was an unknown like that,
Mm-hmm.
and that's still kind of looming over everything, countries have to find a way, especially like you said here in Southeast Asia, where tourism is huge, a
Mm-hmm.
huge industry. Uh, but you have to find a way to live with the COVID, which is what Cambodia is doing. That's what they've stated. That's their goal. We're just going to have to learn to live with it. They're taking it out of the pandemic stage and uh, decreasing it to an endemic. But they also have to do it safely. So it's going to take a while. You know, they're doing it step by step by step.
Hmm.
The Khmer New Year is coming up for the first time in 2 years. That's going to be a full on celebration. And I believe they're just waiting to see how high, if the numbers jump really high, the number of new COVID cases during that holiday when everybody's all together and packed in like sardines.
Right.
Uh, before they make a decision on if they should just open up the borders or visas on arrival to everybody. But I think they'll eventually get there. By the end of the year, I would say my prediction is, and I'm not a psychic. My ex-wife called me a psychic. No, but I'm not a psychic. My prediction is, yes, it should be, Southeast Asia should mostly be open for visas on arrival to most countries by at least the end of the year, if not sooner.
Yeah, I would like to think so too. And, unfortunately, a lot of, first world countries, such as like I think even Canada, Australia, it seems like Australia is almost a prison for a lot of their citizens because they just simply nobody can come in or go out, it seems like at this point. So a lot of these countries are still very, very, very strict on their requirements. I was even told recently from someone who lives in, the Netherlands that they only just now recently over the last couple of weeks have opened up cinemas. I mean, it's that strict still, in some of these countries, which is just shocking. But I can also see again why places like Southeast Asia or a lot of developing countries really need to start coming up with a plan to, opening these borders, because tourism does play a huge factor into that, which leads me to another point too now with, Cambodia specifically, anyway, since that's kind of where we're on the topic about opening up their border slowly, and they finally announced these tourist visas that could be transitioned to long-term visas for reasons of teaching English, in a lot of cases for these expats. How has the, school industry been, going now that, the borders are slowly back opening back up and people have been coming in? Is there a lot of jobs to still go around? Have there been no jobs before in the middle of the pandemic and now everything's opening back up, or how's that been kind of going in terms of the school industry or teaching industry?
Yeah, there's not as many jobs as there used to be,
Hmm.
but the schools are slowly opening back up, trying to get back to full capacity.
Yeah.
Uh, but at the beginning of the pandemic, when people started seeing the writing on the wall and realized that if they didn't want to stay in Cambodia for however long they had to leave, that caused a kind of a mass exodus of uh, people who were here teaching previously.
Yeah.
Schools started closing. Uh, they didn't have any more income, and they said, "Well, with this pandemic, I'm just going to go back home and wait it out there, be with friends, be with family." So
Yeah.
we lost a lot of teachers. So even though there's not as many available job openings as there were, you still have a really good chance of getting a job if you want to teach English. The schools are always hiring. The majority of them will be in Phnom Penh because that is the capital. But like I said, it depends on where you want to live.
Sure.
But there are jobs available. You can get a job because some schools are really desperate for teachers because all of them had left 2 years ago, and now they're opening up and just don't have the talent to open up a classroom. so
Yeah.
so I think it's a pretty good time to get a teaching job here.
Yeah,
Uh,
I find that interesting because they've completely, they closed everything off because of the pandemic, and now as a result, now they have to play catch up, and now they're desperate to get teachers. I can imagine China being on this scale by a million fold because of everything that's happened there with the English teaching industry. It's just horrific. It's so bad.
and the fact that I heard that like a lot of these online teaching companies, which a lot of people relied on during the pandemic,
Yeah.
uh, they're all going south because of the ban on teaching Chinese students or something of that
Yeah.
nature. And that's where that's the money line right there for teaching online or the Chinese students. And if you don't have that, I mean, you're not going to make a fortune teaching kids from Romania. The
Absolutely.
ones, China are the ones that
Well,
yeah, you need that market.
I think that would create an even bigger black market, teaching industry because you just have that many people who lost their jobs, but yet a lot of these companies still are desperate to have English teachers. So I'm sure there's been a big black market industry there. But I'm wondering also if that's kind of played a role into Cambodia or some of the surrounding Southeast Asian countries for people who were living in China that, lost their job. And I'm wondering if there's been an influx, a lot of people moving down to, Cambodia, particularly, trying to find a job. I don't know if you've ever seen an increase in that because of the whole industry there in China or how that's worked.
Not really.
Yeah.
I haven't seen or heard of any great influx of people from China looking for jobs. Like I said, schools here are still, some of them are really desperate
Mm-hmm.
for teaching. I know there's always that underlying fear about China and Cambodia because they are allies.
Right.
You know, every government has different allies, and I know there's at least in the United States and in certain circles, there's a big anti-Chinese sentiment.
Yep.
And so when they hear about, Chinese invested $100 million for this project in Cambodia, they kind of put two and two together and come up with five by saying, oh, China's buying Cambodia, and pretty soon it's going to be a communist state and all. And I just want to say, I think that's way over exaggerated.
Right.
They have ties, they are allies, but America has allies that are not necessarily friends with Cambodia. Cambodia has allies that aren't necessarily a friendly nation to the United States, and that's just politics. And that's one thing I never talk about on my channel are the local politics, because first, it's not my place to judge how they run their country. I'm a guest here.
Oh,
I
sure.
try to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And second, it's so, one of the things I love about this country is that I kind of got away from the politics.
Yeah.
From home. Just, it's on everybody's mind. Everything is politicized. Everything is scrutinized. Everything you say is examined and analyzed to death.
Yeah.
And I just got tired of that.
Believe me, I could wholeheartedly agree with you on that. I mean, it's particularly here in the United States, it's just on another level, and I feel like it's just gotten worse over the last few years. I feel like and in a weird way, I feel like the pandemic has exacerbated the whole situation, and it's just by tenfold, really. I mean, it's so bad here. Yeah, and it's a bizarre thing because when I lived in Vietnam, they're considered a communist country, but you feel like that you have less freedoms, but in a weird way, it almost feels like you have more freedoms, because you're getting away from a lot of the BS and a lot of the drama that goes on here. And it almost feels like you're more free and more people are just, more wholesome and you just have a much more genuine experience living there and just feels more free to me anyways, which kind of leads me to the point of the people of Cambodia. How have the people been there, since your time living there? How do people treat you as an American, foreigner?
Oh, man. If you need one reason to move to Cambodia, except the fact that it's really inexpensive to live here, that would be the people. I mean, they are the most giving, friendly group of people I've ever met in my entire life. I've never suffered any prejudices because I'm from America.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been talked down to because I'm a foreigner in their country and don't know their language. They're more than willing to have and that's one thing I had to process in my mind when I first got here, because in the United States, I was kind of a loner. I was kind of by myself, and because I'm sure you're aware that sometimes in the United States, you don't want to look at the wrong person. You just kind of keep your head down, because if you look at somebody wrong, you're going to turn with that. And then
Absolutely.
You're going to what are you looking at? You look like a homeless crackhead Santa. And I'm like, I know. Let me go get my McDonald's. But here, I was just kind of overcome at first with how friendly these people are. They will come up and just start having a conversation with you, asking your name, where are you from? They're very direct, and they like to know things about other cultures. Oh, you're from America. Oh, they ask you if you're married, do you have kids? Questions that we wouldn't ask in polite society back.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely not.
And because they'll ask a man here will ask an American woman, "Oh, how old are you?" You know, because to them it's not a thing. They're just being open. You know, they just want to know, and they'll tell you theirs, and it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And but pretty soon you get used to just walking down the street, and you'll stop and you'll have a conversation with a random guy you've never seen before, or will probably never see again. But they'll act like you've been buddies for years.
Yeah.
And I've never seen a group of people who were so poor and didn't have a lot of money who was so willing to give anything they had. You walk around to some of these villages in the outer region, which are beautiful places with extreme poverty. But you're invited into people's homes. They're going to make you rice. They're going to take some of the chicken that they were going to have for dinner and, you know, make it so that there's enough for you.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
I know, you know, when it comes to crime, there's not a lot of crime here. It's a very safe country. Like there's opportunistic crime, bag snatchings, and if you lose something, if you lose your phone or something, and it's a nice phone, you're not going to get it back. What's the space? Chances are you're not going to get it. Yeah. And there are pickpockets during the main holidays when there's a lot of people gathered. But as far as violent crimes against foreigners, it's so rare here. Rarely happens. You can go down the street 3 o'clock in the morning. I've had pockets full of money coming back from a bar at 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
Lost, wandering around, and nothing bad ever happened.
Well, I was going to say that, you know, I've seen your videos of you kind of out and about random parts of Siem Reap. It almost looks pitch black, really, but it's in the middle of the night and you just have no worry in the world, which is kind of how exactly I felt in Vietnam too. I actually had looked up, you know, I always kind of research travel warnings from the U.S., you know, travel site, just kind of see what countries look like they're on a danger level. You know, what's funny is Cambodia is actually one of the only countries in Southeast Asia right now that has a level 4 do not travel warning. And I think part of that is just to do with COVID. I don't know if it's because there's more COVID cases in Cambodia than the other Southeast Asian countries right now. I have no idea, but I found that so interesting because I thought to myself, it's not a dangerous country at all. And, you know, again, to your point, bag snatching or pickpocketing is probably to the most of the time the level extent of crime that probably happens. And, you know, the unfortunate reality is with, you know, female expats is that they are going to be at a higher risk than us as men. You know, that's just the reality of it. Men usually are going to be safer in foreign countries for the most part. So, but, you know, and like I was saying, my time in Vietnam, I never once worried about, you know, getting, you know, hurt or pickpocketed or, you know, anything. And most of the time it's because, you know, I was wearing, you know, Adidas sweatpants that have zippers on them too. So I always avoided that situation that if I knew I was going to be in a crowded area, like you were saying, you wouldn't even really have to worry about that situation. So
I do warn people not to, you know, if you do go out at night, don't take anything you can't afford to lose.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've read posts like in different Facebook groups, people saying something like, I was in a tuk-tuk last night and I lost my passport.
Yeah.
Like, why are you taking your passport with you? You don't take your passport with you. You keep that in your room. You know, you make a copy and put that piece of paper in your pocket. Should
absolutely.
Anybody want to see it. But you never take your passport. So
that is a great point. Absolutely. Well, I was gonna say because I actually watched another YouTube channel. His name is Rike. I actually did a video with him. He talks about his life in the Philippines and stuff, and he absolutely said the same thing as you. Do not bring things that you cannot afford to lose. Your passport being one of the biggest documents you do not want to lose. You lose that, you are stuck until you can get a new passport, and that takes a long time. And especially if you're planning on leaving soon and then you lose your passport, that messes up all of your plans. So I absolutely agree with you. The best thing to do is get a copy of your passport in case, you know, whoever wants to stop you and asks for record of your documentation could see that. Has that happened to you? Have you ever been stopped by police or anyone say, hey, I want to see record of your police or your records or whatever?
I was on a motorbike and I went the wrong way down one-way street, and they don't have regular police here. Like, they're not out patrolling the streets, getting behind cars, waiting to pull over. Which is why traffic is a mess, but they do have checkpoints. And if they see somebody riding a motorbike without a helmet or you're doing something wrong, they'll step in the middle of the street and just say, come on over, buddy. We're going to have a talk. And that was my case. And that's the only time I was, thank you. Should have dropped me some caffeine here, which is always good. But I was driving the wrong way down a one-way street because I didn't see the mark. I didn't see where the sign was. And that's the only time the police officer ever asked me for my passport.
Uh-huh.
Other than that, no, I've never been asked randomly at any, not even at checkpoints when the COVID lockdowns were going on and we had to
Wow.
travel from one area to the other. I
Hmm.
never asked for my passport. They just wanted to say, hey, do you have a mask?
Yeah.
If you're in a crowd, you're going to have a mask.
Oh, absolutely. I was the same thing in Vietnam too, and I know I'm making a lot of comparisons, but some of these things are very similar to each other. Cambodia
Oh,
and
sure.
Vietnam, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I would have police officers that would, outside these military bases, they would smile at me and say hello, and they would try to even talk to me in Vietnamese, and I couldn't understand them, but they were smiling the whole time. I mean, they're holding these AR-15s assault rifles, but they're smiling, so I know I'm okay. So because they have to guard these military bases. But
Yeah.
it just
I,
goes to show
just
they're
like in the
friendly.
book, it's like it's a very non-confrontational kind of vibe,
Yeah.
you know. Like they try to avoid a confrontation. They don't want to start fights. They don't want. And that's why when foreigners come over here and they get going down there on Pub Street, which is probably the most popular bar area, maybe even in all of Cambodia. Everybody knows Pub Street.
Right.
People come here for two things, man. During the day, they want to check out Angkor Wat and then party at night on Pub Street.
Right.
That's usually the agenda of most short-term people. But foreigners come down there, they have a little bit too much to drink, they start confrontations and start getting loud, and that's very disrespectful in this culture.
Absolutely. No,
They're
absolutely.
very disrespectful to yell. That their philosophy is yelling never solves anything. Getting
It,
angry doesn't solve anything.
it
So
doesn't. Even here, obviously, that's never going to solve anything. The reality is here too. You get too loud with somebody, police are there in an instant too, and they break that stuff up real quick. So, um,
that's
speaking.
another thing here
Uh huh.
too, that you can be a weirdo. You can be a weirdo and not have to worry about it. You still be accepted. Look at me. I've seen people do things here that in the United States, I guarantee a cop would have been there in 5 minutes.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
but the locals, they're just walking by people. As long as you're not breaking the law
Yeah.
or starting any violence or anything, they will let you just be yourself. You can do what you want. You can
Sure.
be a weirdo back home. Over here, they're not going to get a second glance. As
Right.
long as you're not hurting anybody or breaking the law, they don't
Well,
judge. They don't care.
I was gonna say, and it seems like in Siem Reap at least, particularly, but I'm sure a lot of Cambodia and some other third world or developing countries, police definitely have a different perspective on many different, laws. There's a lot of things that seem like that are very flexible in these countries that police kind of bat an eye to sometimes, and
Oh,
because I've done a bit of research on some of the things that happen, in Cambodia, some of the a lot of the illegal activities that occur there, unfortunately, in some circumstances. But it's like, it seems like almost police just almost bat an eye on certain things. One of the bigger things being drugs is a big problem there. That there's many illegal drugs that particularly. I mean, I don't know about the locals, but at least the stories I've heard about from expats. One expat particularly, like think of who had a YouTube channel is No Joke Howard, and I'm sure you've heard of him before.
oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
he, t- I mean, very straightforward guy. I have to give him credit on that. But he talked about his experience with, dealing with drug addiction and just how easy it was to get these illegal substances in Cambodia. Is
It
that
was
still a big problem there even today?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, in today's Khmer times, I always go through the headlines when I get up. There was a big article about how the prime minister here is encouraging strongly. So I
Yeah.
guess yelling uh, some of his some of the police forces to get rid of this drug problem because there have been so many arrests just in the last couple of months, and I'm not talking arrests for small things like minor possession. I mean like kilos and kilos of
Yeah.
all different kinds of things, everything from crack to heroin to speed to
Absolutely.
you name it. Yeah, and it is very easy to get. I mean, you'll be walking down the road sometimes in some parts of town, and a tuk-tuk guy will just friend will say, "Hey, you want a tuk-tuk?" You say no, and he goes, "Hey, you want some weed?" I say
Yeah.
no, and he goes, "Heroin?" And I'm like, whoa, that's a big leap, man. You went from marijuana to heroin. Holy shit, it's just a big way growing.
Yeah. Jump from 0 to 100 in a second. Yeah. Oh
But
man.
yeah, they'll offer. You can find it pretty easily here. That's why I tell people, if you have an issue with like drugs or alcohol, and
Yeah.
you come here, you're going to find those things readily available. This isn't going to be a cure for your problem
Right.
because it's going to be so easily available and so much cheaper here.
Yeah.
But then again, you're not going to. I mean, you never know what you're going to get because it is the black market, and
Hmm.
you
Um,
know.
well, and yeah, and that's the thing. And I remember you've mentioned this on a few times in some of your videos that you might not necessarily agree with a lot of the things that are going on in this country, but it's just it just is the reality of what's going on, and you just
Yeah.
have to learn to accept it. Or you said something along the lines of you'll have a very difficult time of trying to adjust to that, because you see someone just blatantly asking someone, do you want some heroin and stuff like that. You hear that here in the United States, you're probably calling the police immediately, reporting this guy. But there, it's a natural part of life. Now, when you were offered these kind of things, was this more during the daytime where, anyone would just ask you, or was it more at nighttime where people were trying to be more low key, but they would still, just ask you? What time of day do people have asked you that?
I've been asked that during the day. I've been asked that at night. I've been asked
Wow.
that and it's just certain tuk-tuk drivers.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're just trying to make extra money, I know, but here's the thing. It's like when you think of your typical drug dealer, like somebody who sells cocaine or
Hmm.
heroin in America, you think of the bad guy, and like you said, you want to call the police or just get away from him.
Yeah.
But here, it's just almost like he asked you, "Hey, do you want to give me $5?" And you say no, and he goes, "Okay, goodbye."
Hmm.
But it's all friendly, you know what I mean? Like at the end, you say no to everything, joke around about it, and he's laughing and you're laughing, and then you just kind of go on your way.
Yeah.
And then maybe on the way back, you say, "You know what? I do want that tuk-tuk ride, but hey, leave the heroin out of this, just take me home, buddy."
Right. Absolutely. That's
It's also a scam sometimes. I know I talked about this where tuk-tuk guys are in cahoots with a local police officer. So they're waiting for that guy to walk around and say, "Yeah, I'll take some marijuana,"
right.
and or whatever, sell him the marijuana. The tuk-tuk guy will call his police friend. The police friend will come right up to the guy that just bought it. Not only will they have to pay the cop a fine, they're going to confiscate the drugs. The
Hmm.
tuk-tuk guy is going to get a cut of the bribe to get out of going to jail, and he's going to get the bag of weed back to sell it to another guy to do it again. So
Interesting.
everybody's making money. That never buy drugs from a tuk-tuk guy.
Right. Right. Yeah. And
Never buy drugs. No, yeah, let me change that. Never buy drugs.
you just shouldn't in general, but if you do, then that's just it
Yeah.
is what it. And that's again, that's the thing that we were just kind of mentioning, that's just a natural part of what the life is there, because it's hard to again conceptualize something like that happening on a day-to-day basis here. But there, it's just, again, that's just what it is, and the more flexible you can be in understanding that's just how the country is, then the easier time you'll have, you said. So,
A lot of people talk about the corruption here.
uh
You know, bribing people to get certain things and
yeah.
how bad it is. And part of that might be true. And I'm not going to lie. Like I said, we just have to accept that that's the way things are.
Yep.
It's not my place to judge it, but it is what it is. But I always try to put a positive spin, because that also means that if you want something that maybe as a foreigner you're not necessarily supposed to have here or
Hmm.
not supposed to do here, you can use that to your advantage. You know it's
Hmm.
corrupt. You know if you get to the right people, if you have the right amount of money,
Hmm.
you can get that done. So it's not all bad, is what I'm trying to say. It depends on
Well,
how you
yeah,
look
I
at it.
agree. I think I could see that being an advantage, particularly in certain types of medication. Maybe there's some medications that you weren't approved, because, as you know, it's very difficult to get some medications here in the United States to get approved for it. If you really feel like you have a condition or something you want to be treated, but doctors saying, "Hey, I can't approve you for this because of this or that." But if you feel like you really need it, you have that easy opportunity to do it there in Cambodia, I'm sure, because again, it's not just illegal drugs, but it's just medications too, I'm sure, anti-anxiety drugs,
Or
other things.
like a speeding ticket. Like the time I got pulled over for a speeding ticket, he said the fine was going to be $20. They take your bike, and they make it. I didn't have 20 bucks on me, so I'm
Yeah.
messaging my friend, hey man, go to the ATM, give me 20 bucks, blah, blah, blah. And he didn't answer back. He didn't answer back. And we're standing around in the little area where they keep the bikes, waiting to pay our fine. And finally, a single police officer walks up and just kind of says, what are you still doing here? And I explain, I'm waiting for my friend. He's got to go give me the fine money. And he goes, no $20? I said, no, I don't have $20. He goes, do you have $5? I said, yeah, I got $5. He said, give it to me. And our bike was released.
Wow. Yeah.
That money
That's
went in his pocket, did not get a receipt for it. But he went up to the guy that's holding the bikes and said, give it to us, and off we went. That's a pretty good savings, I think.
so question about that too, by the way. If somebody's an expat, brand new expat there, would you recommend, because they want to be there long term, would you recommend that they do buy a motorbike, or do you think, if they're getting sustainable income every month, do you think tuk-tuks could, suffice just fine with your cost of living, or what is your opinion on that? Because I know how the traffic can be there too. Maybe that might scare some people off from wanting to drive.
Yeah, it is a learning curve driving here because believe it or not, there are rules,
Uh-huh.
but they seem to be only be known by the locals. So you're not going to know what those rules are, and it's going to be confusing, and they might not make sense to you. But if you get past that learning curve, having a motorbike can definitely help you see more things, get
Sure.
to places quicker. It's a very hot country. It's hot all year round. Very hot April, it can be up to like 110 degrees sometimes. So if you just want to go to the store, you don't feel like walking, having a motorbike is great. I prefer walking because I was a big fat slob before I came here. And all the clothes I came here with, I can no longer wear. They hang on me like
Uh-huh.
grapes. I can't do it. And I just like to walk because I see so many things. Well, when you're driving or you're on a tuk-tuk, you're passing by things, but you're not really seeing them. When you're walking, you look off and you see something happening over there, and you have the option to just go, you know what? I'm just going to walk over there and check it out, see what's happening. And I found some really cool things that way. That's how mainly I found everything getting around here when I first got here. But a motorbike can definitely help you, and you can find them, you can get the little 50cc scooters, the Honda Todays. You can find them used all in the Facebook marketplace for like, 200, 250 bucks,
Oh,
or you can
wow.
buy a new, bigger motorcycle for, maybe $1,000.
Yeah.
Anything 125cc or below, you don't need a license for. So, and they have options, like I said, from a couple $100 all the way up to $1,000. So
Yeah, that's
it's all,
that's that's a
it
great
depends on
point.
how comfortable somebody will be uh, riding a bike in a country where they don't know the rules. You do want
Absolutely.
to be careful, but what I
Well,
did, I just started seeing what the locals are doing and started doing that.
that
And
I
it took
think
a
that's the best
while.
way to do it.
It worked out. So
That is the best way to do it, because if you're kind of wanting to do things your own way, especially from things you've learned here in the US, it's not going to work. It's not going to work out there, because I've seen the traffic in Vietnam, and maybe it's a similar a way in which people, jaywalking isn't even really a thing, and like it is a thing. What am I saying? It's a thing, but it's like it's ignored. Nobody's going to say anything if you want to jaywalk across 100 motorbikes heading towards you. I've seen this bizarre thing where motorbikes will just drive around you as you're going across the street. People just
yeah.
fearlessly just walk across the street. Is that very common there too?
Oh yeah, yeah. That, that was one of my biggest fears when I first got here. I didn't know. I was looking at some of these busier streets, going, "How am I going to get across there? There's no crosswalks. There's no light. Just constant traffic." And then again, I just started watching people, and I saw people just step off the curb, and I'm like, "Oh man, I'm about to see a crime scene here." And but they made it, and so I just started doing that. It's weird, but like you said, they do, man. The motorcycles will go around you,
Hmm.
which is really weird because you're walking and you got one going on your one going right past you from behind, and then one going in front of you before you step into its way. But they seem to know what they're doing, and so far I've been lucky. I haven't gotten in any accidents or anything, so it's working out.
Yeah, I was gonna say you try to do that here in the U.S. You're walking across, and there's motorcycles. I mean, there'd be a lot more cars, obviously. So you wouldn't want to do that generally, but you'd probably get a few strong languages being said to you also trying to go across. So that's also just funny how there it's just like they're like, okay, well, those guys walking, let me just get around them. No one ever really thinks anything different.
The basic rule that I can see is that the bigger vehicle always has the right of way, is always right. You
Yeah,
always yield to the bigger. So of course, pedestrians, we are on the, the very low end of that. We're the lowest ones. So you kind of learn that when you can go and when you can't. I don't know. It's just something you have to observe and then just go
it's a
through
play
it
it by
and
ear scenario kind of thing, right? Yeah,
it is because there's no hard and fast
yeah.
way to teach somebody how to do that. Yeah.
I think the way I kind of did in Vietnam was obviously if you just have super heavy congested traffic, you're not daring to walk across that, especially if it's going quick. You don't dare do that because I mean there's a very high risk you will get hit by somebody. But you only got a few bikes kind of coming around, and it's not super high speeds. You kind of could just generally get around, not have too many problems. So that's kind of how I did it. But again, you're absolutely right. You kind of just get a feel for it over time, and certainly after 4 years, I'm sure you're probably at a pro level point now where you just you just know exactly how to do it and when to do it. I was
Now,
gonna say.
I'm probably better at crossing traffic here than I ever was at the video game Frogger. So, but it's kind of like
Right. It is.
real life. And I think I should have a high score here, but I still suck at
I was gonna say you'd probably have one of the highest scores for sure. um,
it.
you know what's really interesting that you mentioned earlier, Dave, was your weight loss that you went through when you moved there. Now, was this just a combination of, and I'm just pointing out the obvious. I think it's just a combination of, again, you were walking, and then I'm assuming the diet was probably one of the biggest changes. Talk a little bit about what that kind of looked like. With the diet changes coming from here in the U.S., where we're obviously notorious for having anything and having as much of anything as you want here, to going to a country where a lot of this food is very localized and fresh, and I'm assuming that contributed to a lot of your weight loss, right?
Yes, that and the walking. Like I said, it's a very hot country. So, of course, when you're walking, you're going to sweat more, you're
Right.
going to lose more weight. But the food here is very fresh and very, like in America, meat is like the main thing, right? Unless you're a
Mm-hmm.
vegetarian. But, you have your meat and your potatoes and maybe a vegetable on the side, but the meat's the highlight. And over here, meat is used very sparingly because it is the most expensive kind of food to buy.
Hmm.
And so they mainly use meat for taste. So you're getting more vegetables and more herbs and more broth and more, maybe noodles and rice. Rice is huge. Of course, you have rice with every meal here. But but meat isn't as consumed or and adored as it is back in America. But when you combine that, eating a lot better because I was a fast food junkie back home. I mean, that was my I either stopped at Wendy's or Burger King or, Taco Bell on the way to work.
Yeah.
And afterwards, I just buy a box of tortillas, pizza rolls, and stick them in the microwave. That was my dinner.
You're describing me right now.
Yeah.
You're describing me. I just had Taco Bell
Yeah.
tonight, actually. So
A
that's
two
really
liter
funny.
of
So
Mountain Dew, for a drink there.
yeah,
And but over here, it's just the opposite. Like, yeah, I'm never hungry because the food is very filling.
yeah.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
But at first, there was that period where now we have a Burger King here, we have a KFC here, we have a Domino's Pizza here, there's
Sure.
a Dairy Queen, there's Swenson's.
Oh,
So there's a lot of Western style restaurants here, but they're also very expensive
yeah.
comparatively. But you can
Absolutely.
go in and go here for $1.25, and it's going to be fresh, it's going to be hot, it's going to be big and filling, and uh, that with a combination of walking almost everywhere I go because I average about 80 kilometers a month of walking
Oh
according
wow,
to
really?
my walking app. Yeah, so that's almost 50 miles, for the Americans. But
Right.
yeah, about 80 kilometers is average. And and it's just great. I mean, I started losing weight. At one point, I lost so much weight, maybe went a little bit too far, when my body was transitioning, that I posted a picture online and my sister was like, "Oh my God, are you sick?" sick meaning, I grew up in a household, you don't talk about death or dying or, masturbation or anything like that. You
Right.
don't talk. So to her, sick was a byword for, do you have cancer? Because she thought I was just over here. Did you go over there to die? you know?
Oh my
No, I
goodness.
just lost a whole bunch of weight. And then it
Yeah.
eventually, now I'm starting to gain. Uh, and it did look, I was like really scrawny and skinny at one point, but your body adjusts over time. And now I'm back to where I normally am. Like I said, I used to have a factory job, so my arms used to be, but I wasn't pumped. I was never jacked, but they used to have some muscle and things behind them, picking up all the parts all day. And not doing that anymore. Those are kind of flabby and useless. But still, uh,
Well,
yeah, diet and exercise. I mean, I know that sounds like something you hear from a diet book, but it actually does work. The kinds of food you eat and the amount of exercise you get really does help. And I've lost probably 40, 45 pounds
oh
since I've been
wow.
here.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
quite a
I had
significant amount.
42 waist size pants and 3X shirts
Wow.
when I came here. And now I can't put any of those on. They're just completely useless to me because it's like sometimes a wife would use a shirt, but it's like a nightgown.
Wow.
This is
Yeah.
huge.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. That's I mean, I can't even imagine that. But not only that, I mean, again, it's funny that she asks you, are you okay? Are you sick? But I'm sure you're feeling the best you felt in a very long time now after losing all of that weight. I'm sure it
Yeah, I had
just
to
makes you feel
look at
better.
the picture. I had to look at the picture and see, what are you talking about? It was so gradual for me, but
Yeah.
people who had seen me since before I left were like, "Holy crap, man, what happened to you?"
Well,
And
I was just gonna say, that one of the diets that you were kind of recently talking about. I don't know if it was in a recent video, or if it was an older video, but I don't know if this is something that you were even remotely accustomed to before you moved to Cambodia. But what it was, the protein aspect of insects and eating insects, and how you kind of got into that. Have you ever eaten insects before you ever came to Cambodia, or is that just a first time thing you tried and then you really got into it?
yeah, the first time I tried was in Cambodia. I had the same. It's funny when you research that topic that only people in North America find that icky.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Like almost every other country, it's either A, acceptable enough,
Mm-hmm.
or B, is a staple of their diet, are insects
Absolutely.
and bugs. And so, of course, I never was exposed to that. But coming here, I mean, one of the best snacks you can have here, and I'm not even exaggerating. They're just fried crickets. They're deep fried crickets, and they come with some herbs, and they come with a little bit of spice. So they have that nice little greasy kind of taste to them, and they're
Mm-hmm.
crunchy on the outside, very, very nice and soft on the inside, and they're delicious.
Wow.
They're just great. And so I started experimenting with other things. You can find the mealworms here, and you can
Mm-hmm.
find grasshoppers. You can find uh, all different kinds of insects. And I found out that was a very common thing in most countries, at least in some regions of most countries. Is insects are a staple of the diet. They're they're easy to grow. They take up less environmental resources than like
Absolutely.
beef or pork or anything. And if you can get over the fact that they're a bug and what they look like, they're very delicious. Very delicious.
Well, it's a protein of the future too. If you really think about it, if we were to undergo some nuclear fallout or something, that might just be the very, protein that we would have to turn to in a lot of circumstances. I mean, they're as such a massively abundant source that it would only make sense, to consume them. And yeah, again, to your point, definitely, people from here, if you think about eating a cricket or a grasshopper, they would just think, well, what is wrong with you? You have some mental issues or something. But again, I think you, yeah, if you do it in the right way, I think it would be fantastic. I definitely would be open to it. And obviously if I was there, I would have to try it. But which kind of leads me to one of the other points about the food. There's, if there's somebody who's moving there who's going to be an expat who wants to be there long term, what is kind of the go-to dishes or food that you would recommend people to eat Cambodian food?
Number one, if you want a good breakfast, and it's only going to cost you 75 cents, all over town in the morning, you're going to find these carts selling something called bobor. Bobor is hard to describe. It's not very photogenic, but it's delicious. It's basically rice porridge. And I know
Wow.
people are going to hear that word rice, the words rice porridge and think, I'm not going to eat porridge. Porridge has a bad reputation,
Right.
right? Eats porridge, except for poor orphans and some tale from the 1800s in a book. But it's very, very delicious. It comes with little bits of meat in there. You get the herbs and the seasonings, and it's filling. It's a great big bowl. It's only 75 cents.
Oh.
Start out your plate. There's a dish here called kaw, and this is a very deep, rich broth that's been simmering all day. Big chunks of pork in it, which is basically all it is. Served on the side is some rice. White rice was made for this broth. If they put that broth in a bottle, I would buy it and drink it. That's how good it is. It's salty and a little sweet, so it's probably not best if you drink it like that, but I
Right.
would. I'm
Right.
telling you. And then you get these big, nice, chunky pieces of pork, and you get some vegetables in there, and you leave full. That's only going to run you like $1 to $1.25, depending on where you go.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Would recommend any of these little, what we call silver pot places that don't necessarily have a name. It's just a family that sets up a stand. They have all these silver pots out front. They cook all day and the night before. Then they put out what they have cooked, and once that pot is gone, they take it off what passes for a menu, which is you basically opening up the pot and looking, saying, "I want this," and it comes with rice, and they're usually only $1 or less for that. And you can find various offerings. If you want more vegetables, you can find that. If you want more meat, you can find dishes with that. And then if you get tired of that and you just want something from back home, head over to the Burger King, get yourself a Whopper.
Yeah,
So
I was about to say, I mean, just how
it's a foodie place here because you can get Italian, I mean, authentic
hmm
Italian and Greek and Indian and American and British food and, like a proper British breakfast. Places have Sunday roasts. There's a local place here that does an all-you-can-eat Aussie steak night every Friday for
oh
only
no
$10.
kidding.
All you can eat Aussie steak and a salad bar.
Wow.
So I mean, you can get that if you want, or you can just eat local, have some babor, have some kha. They have these amazing sandwiches in Vietnam. You're familiar with the banh mi's, right?
Absolutely. Yes, I had those very much every morning. Sometimes in the middle of the night. There'd be places that have it 24/7.
Aren't they awesome? They're awesome.
They are
Cambodia
amazing.
has a version, and they're only 50 cents each, and they're like 6-inch subs almost,
Oh
and they're
wow.
just packed with stuff. I mean, I can get 2 of those for $1, and I'm full all day. So
What is it
try
called
this.
again?
Huh?
What are they called? The sandwiches?
I don't know what they're called locally,
Yeah,
but they're like the banh mi sandwiches in Vietnam.
they're similar to a banh mi. Yeah.
Yeah, the cut baguette and then the meat inside, and then 2 different kinds of sauces, the pickled papaya on top, and they have pate slices and little cheese things in there.
Oh wow, yeah. See that's something I would definitely be into a lot. I also really enjoyed pho. You know, which is interesting. Maybe I've only had two styles of pho in Vietnam. I actually almost prefer the way that Vietnam the pho is here in the U.S. The way Vietnamese people do pho, but because there some of the ingredients I've just never been exposed to. Maybe it's because I didn't spend enough time eating it there. But they would use very bizarre ingredients for me. There was one pho I had that had duck fat and duck blood in it, and you would mix that with everything else. And I was like, I've never had something like this before. Does
Yeah.
Cambodia have something comparable to the pho that Vietnam has?
Oh yeah, yeah. You can actually get authentic Vietnamese pho.
Oh,
There are
really?
places here owned by Vietnamese people who live in Cambodia, own
Okay.
their own restaurant. And one of the first things I ate here locally was actually at a place like that. And this bowl, I swear to God, man, that's the biggest bowl of noodles I've ever had. And
How much
I
was
was
it?
nuts on that, like $1.75. But
Wow.
this thing was huge. It wasn't just a regular size. This was like a Jethro Bodine bowl. That's it. That ages me. That reference right there is going to tell people how old I am. From the Beverly Hills, so anyway. But this thing was delicious. It was spicy. It was on point with every ingredient. Couldn't have been happier. Then they closed down. and it
Yeah.
couldn't have been sad.
Well,
But yeah,
hopefully,
yeah, you can find spa here, and they have all kinds of different noodle dishes. You can get the big rice noodles, you can get the flat noodles, you can get the really thin noodles, like you get angel hair noodles.
uh-huh.
Uh, yeah, they have places, street stall stands where you can go up and order a bowl of noodles and then you just kind of individually put whatever ingredients you want in them. Kind of like a
Yeah.
Subway sandwich of noodles. You tell them
Well,
what you want, I'll give them their ingredients, and they'll make you a bowl.
yeah, I was gonna say, and hopefully, with some of these places that have closed down in the past, hopefully a lot of these places have opened back up, because I kind of want to get into that final topic back on tourism one more time. Is that since the pandemic and then kind of now starting to open things back up, have you noticed a lot of these bars or these kind of westernized restaurants, or just a lot of restaurants in general or businesses, have they started opening back up as well there in Siem Reap?
Yeah, the bars did take a hit, and in a town with, I think, any town that has a lot of expats, bars are going to be a huge part of the scene.
Yeah,
Because you got these retired guys, and they're 70 years old, they don't know what to do with themselves, so they spend all their day at the bar. And so, as a matter of fact, some bars here are open 24 hours a day. There's two that I can recall right now. But not all the bars closed during the pandemic, even during the lockdown, which was weird. Like, again, it's one of those things where if you know the right people and if you got the money to get things done, yeah,
absolutely.
you you can get things done. Um, but there's a lot of bars here owned by Western people, foreigners that come in, and there's again a lot of bars here owned by locals. Uh, You can find a bar anywhere, like, just as easily as you can find food or apartments here, which are extremely easy to find. Uh, you go down, you'll see bars in the middle of almost deserted places. Like you'll be walking down a dirt path that passes for a road in a village, but off to the side there'll be a little shack, and you'll see a sign for that you can buy beer. And you can come in and sit down and have a beer, or like their own homemade little area bar.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Actually, that's really cool. Um,
Yeah, and speaking of vices, I mean, if you're, like I said, don't do drugs, but let's talk about like alcohol and cigarettes. You can buy
mhm.
beer here, 50 cents a can,
Yeah.
if you buy it from the mom and pop stores,
Hmm.
for your own use. Bars are usually anywhere from 50 cents to a dollar per draft. Uh, but if you smoke, and you should not smoke, smoking is horrible, smoking is bad, it's gonna kill you, put you in your grave early. And yes, I do smoke. So for me, this was a big deal. You can get packs of smoke syrup from anywhere from 25 cents to 75 cents a pack.
Yeah. See, that's wild. If you compare that to here in the U.S., where it's like now
$9
$7, $8.
So yeah, you can get Marlboro syrup for $1.50. That's the most expensive one.
Wow,
That's
that's
considered a luxury, $1.50 a pack.
yeah. See, that's wild to me. That really the only thing I like, to your point with the alcohol, with the beer, like in Vietnam again, we're talking about similar prices, maybe a little bit more, maybe because I was more in the downtown area at this time, but it was like 75 cents, 80 cents a can of beer, the local beer. Anyways, we're not talking about exported beers, but that is really
Right.
it's a big deal, for a lot of people, especially if you're just going there to just vacation, not necessarily live there, but you're going there and you just want to go on a vacation. That's really great prices, and you could easily have a pretty good time with, just go out and spend like, not even $20. You have a really great night, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen a lot more? I know we were talking about the businesses opening up, but now with that being said, has a lot more tourists been coming back? Particularly since we're talking about Siem Reap, because that's where you live. Have you seen a lot more tourists coming back again?
Yes, yes. I've noticed that uptick in the last month, since they really
Yeah.
made an effort to promote their tourism back up. Uh, Seeing a lot more foreign faces on the street. And the weird thing is, when I first got here, I was like, all you foreigners can go home. I don't want any more of you guys. That's why I came over here to avoid you guys. But then during the pandemic, you didn't see any, and you kind of missed them. I kind of missed the other foreign people. Because
Yeah.
you make relationships here, but sometimes you see somebody and it's like, oh, you're from America too, and you have something to talk about, something to reminisce about. And you have stuff in common. So I kind of missed all the foreigners when they, after complaining about it for so long and some of the things they did. So now it's
Mm.
good to see him back, and you've seen a lot more faces everywhere in town. And I don't know, it's hard to tell sometimes when they're walking down the street if they're an expat or if they're just a tourist, but you do see them a lot more, and they're visiting businesses, spending their money, and that's very important for the economy. So
Absolutely.
I hope the trend continues.
Yeah, and like I said, I would like to think even by again, this is an optimistic, view because we don't really know what's going to happen. There could be yet another variant that occurs before even the summertime. And what I think will end up happening at this point, since things are already going a good direction, in my opinion, just depending on how the variant would be, I think it would just be kind of a small, step back and then probably another big leap forward. And I think that's just kind of how 2022 is going because everybody at this point is just saying, hey, listen, get vaccinated. If you don't, you can't come here or face the repercussions at the same time, and I think that's just the mindset I think a lot of these countries are starting to have at this point. I don't know if that's how you kind of feel that even if we get another variant, I don't think that's going to necessarily cut off the tourism factor for moving forward at this point. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
No, at this point, Cambodia is committed to fully reopening under the new normal, encouraging vaccinations, and they still encourage wearing a mask in public
Right.
because of the Omicron, that this new variant had uptick the numbers in cases here over the past few days, the number of reported cases. So they're concerned about that,
Mm-hmm.
but they've already made the commitment that our country is reopening. Uh, the prime minister got on TV and said, we're not going to have any more lockdowns. We're not going to have any more shutdowns. We
Right.
got to learn to live with it and get on. So here's what you do. Get a vaccine, wear a mask in public. If you're sick, stay home and recuperate. They're encouraging that basically because, Cambodia's healthcare system is not the best. And during the height of the pandemic, they were overwhelmed. They were using school gyms and any other places they could find to use a set of beds for the COVID patients. But their healthcare isn't that great, and they were kind of overwhelmed. And they just don't want that to happen again. So they're saying if you have symptoms or if you test positive, stay home.
Absolutely. Yeah. That
But
should.
they're committed to staying open. They're now open, they're saying,
Yeah.
and they're committed to that. So, I mean, if something drastic happens, of course, that could always change. But
Sure.
like you, I don't see that happening.
And
I think they're gonna
I was gonna
continue.
say just kind of how things are going at this point. I don't foresee a lot of these countries reversing completely back to shutdown again after they're made such big strides to get to where they are now. Again, I think it would just be a small step going back, saying, hey, okay, we got a new variant in, we need to get a little bit more strict on things, but we're not going to have a complete shutdown again. Maybe unless some national emergency happens. But again, I really don't foresee that in this year because we see all these countries, particularly at least in Southeast Asia, which we're kind of on the topic of, opening back up again. As for the rest of the world, who knows at this point? Like again, my story in the Netherlands with only the cinemas just starting opening back up. I mean, it's just that's a whole nother ball game there. But these
Yeah,
countries,
sometimes I got to remember that too. That
yeah,
over here we had it kind of easy compared to even first world countries.
yeah,
It hasn't been as strict, and I hear about what's happening, like in some places, in some countries, like you were talking about the cinemas and mask mandates being back in schools in some states in the United States. And
yeah.
I think who's in the developing countries because here we're not seeing that same thing. So, but I try to keep in mind when I talk about how great it is here that other people, because of this pandemic, are really going through some stuff. And so I'm not bragging about it. I'm just saying I happen to land in a country that kind of did well under the circumstances. They didn't do everything perfect. They made some
Sure.
missteps, but then they got on with it and they said, okay, we messed up. Let's try it this way. And so far it's working.
I'm
And
wondering.
I think the COVID is going to be around. I mean, I
Sure.
think most people would agree that it's probably going to be a yearly jab, just like the flu shot.
Yeah.
It's going to be something that's not going to go away. I think it's something we're going to have to live with for a long time, like the flu
Yeah.
or like the herpes you got from that bachelor party in Las Vegas, that kind of thing. It's going to stay with us, and we just got to get used to living with it.
Yeah, and the reality is here into the U.S. is we are still number one cases in the world, and a lot of our population actually has been vaccinated, but I think a lot of it too is just the freedoms that we feel like that we have here in the U.S. and a lot of retaliation against vaccination mandates, and I think that's why we've consistently stayed number one. But at least we still have the opportunities to be able to freely leave and come back if we want at this point, because I think even the US is starting to get a mentality, hey, we can't just lock down everything forever. At this point we just got to learn to live with it, like you were just saying. And I absolutely agree. I think it's going to be a yearly jab at this point. I think it's just going to be influenza 2.0. You're just going to have to learn to deal with it in modern day society, and it's a sad reality because we did lose a lot of people with the initial outbreaks. But again, now that we kind of understand what's going on, I think we're just going to have to kind of learn to deal with that. And just one more point to bring up about the whole school English teaching situation one more time, because tourism is starting to grow back there. I forgot to mention earlier, in terms of salaries with these schools opening back up again, do you think that you could see expats making a similar or comparable salary to before the pandemic, or do you think we're going to be at a lower point, or do you think it just differs depending on where you teach or what school you go to?
Yeah, all of that actually. I do see salaries going up as more and more students enroll and get back to uh, going back to school.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, on average, before the pandemic, the average salary was about $1,000 a month. And
Yep.
if you're listening from America, you're like, oh, that's not good. But here, that's
It's
a
great.
king ransom. You can
Absolutely.
live so well here on $1,000 a month. You can live like a king almost. And because everything's so inexpensive. I got this room here is only $70 a month for rent. So,
Wow. Wow.
it's like, yeah, $1,000 goes a long way here. But
Absolutely.
it's gone down a little bit between 700 to 850 a month now. Some schools are offering. A lot of it's going to depend on your certifications and experience.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely have to have a TEFL certificate teaching
Absolutely.
English. That's a required minimum. You don't need a bachelor's degree, but if you have one, even if it's not in education, you would probably get more money for having that. And if you have any prior teaching experience, I'll take that into consideration. Like everything here, it's a negotiation. When you go to interview for a job and they make you an offer, if they make you an offer, negotiate up. So the worst they can do is say, no, we can't do that. And then you can make up your mind from there. But always give it the old college try. But I think eventually it's going to go back up. It is going to depend on the schools. Some schools are on a very, very tight budget, always have been. Other
Absolutely.
schools always get new students, and so they have more money. They can raise their tuition a little bit because they're getting higher quality teachers, and they pass that along to the
Ab-
staff. So,
Absolutely. Well, yeah. Speaking of the degree, because that is an important point there. And it's a great thing about Cambodia. I think that's something that very much attracts a lot of people to Cambodia, is the fact that you can still get a work visa and not have to have a degree, and you can get, a regular teaching job, full time. You don't have to worry about kind of going under the table jobs, back and forth between different small places like you would in some of these other countries where you need a degree, but you could still technically teach, just not legally. With the degree, yeah, right. That's the key word. With the degree, particularly, maybe some people don't know this, is because, some of these countries, they require you to notarize your degree before you actually even leave the U.S. to come to some of these countries. Do you know if Cambodia requires a notarized degree, if that was the document you want to provide, or could you just have your degree with you and that you think that would count?
yeah, just your degree. I've never heard of any school asking for a notarized degree.
Yeah.
Um, the, the thing about Cambodia is that not very many jobs are advertised like on social media.
Uh-huh.
Here's more footwork. You really have to get out. You have to make a packet, which will include a cover letter, your CV or resume, and a copy of your TEFL certificate. If you have
Yep.
another degree, a copy of that. And you put it in a manila envelope and you make a bunch of copies. And you take these copies and pass them out to school to school to school. So there's some legwork involved. But eventually, you'll start getting called in for interviews. And from there, you can, you'll probably start getting offers for this much money per month. And then, like I said, negotiate from there. But they don't need anything fancy. Uh, I doubt most schools will even check your references.
Authenticity. Yeah.
Because who's going to call the United States to check, your mom that you're a good kid and you should give my son a job? I don't think they're going to pay for that.
Yeah. I wouldn't think so either.
Oh, and by the way, speaking of that, just to let people know, if that's your plan to come over here and teach, you you generally only get paid once a month at the beginning of the month that you previously finished, and you usually get paid in cash. They'll give you the cash, you count
Mhm.
it, they'll have you sign a ledger saying I got paid. So it's not going to be a weekly thing. So you really have to be able to budget. So you don't get that $1,000 or whatever on the first, and all of a sudden by the weekend you're broke. You still got 3 more weeks to go. So
Yeah,
this
yeah,
will
that
work well.
that's actually a really good point that he mentions because we're so again, I'm just referring to the United States. I know some of you guys are from different countries, but United States, we're so used to our bi-weekly and even sometimes weekly
Yeah.
paychecks, mostly bi-weekly. So that's a great point. If you feel like you're going to have a budget, you really need to be smart with your budgeting. Now, I would recommend just in general, I have a video of mine that explains preparations of how to move to another country. I would very much recommend, obviously, you have money already saved before you were to move to any country really. But I think one of the nice things about Cambodia though, again, is that since the cost of living is just so cheap anyways. I mean, like he was talking about, he has this room that's not even, you said $70 a month, which is just absolutely insane to even think about. I know a lot of apartments or places you could live. I don't know the differences between Siem Reap and Phnom Penh. I know Phnom Penh's probably a little bit more money, but I know you could probably get an okay place for not even $200 to $300, and you get a decent place. So I don't know what your opinion is, but for advice for anyone who's coming there to live as an expat, what do you think? $2,000 saved, if that, just to kind of get your foot, in the door to find a job and then get your monthly income going.
Yeah, two to 3,000 to start out. If you plan on coming over here and immediately start looking for a job,
Uh-huh.
your apartments here are very easy to find. You don't need, sometimes you don't even need a deposit. There's no credit check.
Mm-hmm.
There's no fancy paperwork you got to fill out. If you go look at an empty apartment and you got the money to move in, they're going to let you move in that day. It's really a 1 day, very simple process. And they're all over town. Empty apartments are all over. So you can have the budget you want, the amenity you want, uh, very, very easily. But if your plan is to start looking and get a teaching job as soon as possible, 2 to 3,000 is good. If you want to wait a few months, bump that up to at least give yourself 800, $600 to $800 a month, depending on your lifestyle, how much you want to spend.
Yeah.
Per month. So if you plan on coming over here and waiting 6 months, adjust accordingly. But for the average person, you're going to come off the plane, you're going to start looking for a job within the first week or two. You should be good to go because you'll have money left over by the time you find a job.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And again, it's not necessarily difficult to find a job, and I would like to assume, particularly if you're a native English speaker, you probably have an even easier opportunity than somebody who's not. But even so, I'm sure you've seen plenty of people who aren't native English speakers still find jobs, right? That's still pretty common?
Yeah, there's schools here that hire a lot of Filipino
Mm-hmm.
English teachers. They speak good enough English where they can, teach the basics to a kindergarten class. Uh, a lot of people from, uh, yeah, I forget. But there's another country, the Czech Republic, that they speak really good English. They get hired here quite a bit, and that English isn't their first language.
Right.
So it's possible if you're not a native speaker to get a job, but you might be offered less money because of
Sure.
that, but still enough to live on. But if you're a native English speaker, and I'm not saying this just because I'm from America, so
Right.
don't think, but really, one of the reasons I got hired at one of my first full-time teaching jobs here, one of the reasons the guy said, we just need an American accent. We just need an American English teacher to teach that accent. Parents want it. They want us to bring in a teacher who has an American accent. So,
Uh,
sometimes it has its advantages.
I absolutely agree. China, I'm using as an example here, is very similar. Before they would just, if you had a very clear accent, like an American accent, which is probably amongst one of the most popular in the world, it's either between us and the British accent, UK. I would
Yeah.
say we are probably the two most favored accents to have for English teaching. And I'm sure that's a massive advantage in Southeast Asia because you go in there and then some Russian guy comes in, you're both taking the same interview. If they were to choose one, even if they're probably more qualified than you, the reality is you would probably get the job just because, again, not only are you a native English speaker, but you also have a particular accent that they very much are interested in. So I absolutely agree with you, and that seems to be a commonality with a lot of Southeast Asia, or just Asia in general. And it even goes as far sometimes as to even get specific in their ethnicity. Sometimes, or in terms of your skin color, sometimes people prefer to have a white Caucasian teacher, which is a strange phenomenon to me. I didn't really know about this until I started even looking into this a long time ago, but. There seems to be a phenomenon where they only like to hire white teachers, and even if you're a native English speaker and you're not white, they would sometimes even hire a non-native white teacher. Has that happened in Cambodia? Have you ever seen that before? I don't know if
Yeah.
you've heard of that.
It is generally not put out in public. Like they won't specifically request a certain skin color,
Right.
but it's kind of known on the down low that yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like you said. If I walked in and had less experience and less education than a Russian because of my accent and because of where I'm from, I'm probably going to get the job.
Hmm.
But if I have a lot more experience and or let's say a person of color came in, they have a lot more experience, they have a degree, very well educated, and then a blonde 20-year-old white woman comes in with no experience with just a basic Temple degree, that she's probably going to get the job.
Yeah, and that's interesting for me to think about, and I don't want anyone who's listening to this to think that this is based off of a racial bias. There could be very certain circumstances where that might be the
Yeah.
case, but I think it's more of an ignorance factor, and I just wanted to bring that up because I know a lot of countries are
It
like
really
this.
does money.
Yeah.
It really does. A lot of it boils down to money. They know that they can put that pretty white girl's face on a poster and a picture
Hmm.
on a brochure, and local parents are going to flock to that school because they want their kid to learn from a pretty white American woman.
Yeah, I found that very interesting, and that's something I just wanted to bring up. But anyways, Dave, finally, any advice that you'd give to just any general advice you give to expats, thinking about coming out to Cambodia? Obviously, again, we're finally moving out of the whole COVID thing, and obviously everyone will be keeping an eye on your YouTube channel on new visas or new visa opportunities, and hopefully get to that point where we get those visas on arrival again. But once we kind of get to that point, is there any just general advice you'd give to anybody who's thinking about moving there?
Yeah, basically just be aware of the culture. It's conservative comparatively, and there are some big cultural no-nos you don't want to do. I know as Americans, I've been wronged, and I'm going to yell and scream. Don't do that.
Hmm.
It's a very laid-back vibe here. It really is. Cambodia is full of great, nice people, very friendly, very outgoing. Don't be offended if they come up and make fun of you, maybe because you're fat. They did that with me at first. They would just come up and pat my belly, and go, "Ooh, you fat." But they're just very direct. They're not saying it insultingly, and you can say the same thing back to them. Find something on them, and it might sound like you're roasting each other, but that's not the case. That's just how they're very
Yeah.
open.
Right.
So just don't be offended. Be aware of the cultural things, and uh, contact me if you have any questions.
Great.
Can
Yeah.
do that.
Speaking of which, is there anything? Obviously, I'll be linking your YouTube channel in the description below. Is there any other ways that you want people to check you out or get how to get in contact with you?
Uh, no.
Yeah. Well, I
I
will
don't
just
have
say
any
this.
or, from my YouTube channel and the descriptions and my videos, you can get the links to all my social media and all my other stuff. So, you know,
Exactly. I was about to say, you go to any of Dave's videos, you go to the description of any of those videos, you'll see a plethora of information that he has there. If you go to his About section on his YouTube page, which is actually where I went to get in contact with him via email, you can get in contact with him for business inquiries or just anything in general. So, Dave, it was absolutely a pleasure interviewing you. I wanted to have the opportunity to interview somebody from Southeast Asia again in a new country, and so it's very exciting for me to be able to get this opportunity and a great time too. Finally, where we're starting to kind of get out of this whole COVID craziness we've been getting,
I know.
past the last 2 years.
Can't wait for that. Yeah. And
So
it was really nice of you to have me, man. I really appreciate it. I had a good
absolutely.
time.
Absolutely, man. And like I said, guys, this should be a great year, hopefully, for everything getting back to a more normal again. So, if you are interested in going to Cambodia, you make sure you check out Dave's channel. Dave Does Cambodia. Again, I'll be linking his channel in the description below. Check him out for just anything related to Cambodia, particularly on Siem Reap, if that's something you're interested in. But otherwise, Dave, it's a pleasure. Thank you guys again for watching the video, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.
All right.
Thank you so much, Dave. Appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
All right, man. You too. Thank you.
See ya.